The sound is getting more intense every night, but at least the noise is loud, so it must be very far away. How many days has it been since I started hearing it in the distance? It's been about a week, I think. I know where it's coming. It's coming for the baby. The winds rustle through the nipper leaves. I hear it whispering to me. It tells me to be careful, for it is coming for my child. Soon it will be here. The smell of burning rubber fills the air. It wafts through every opening in our home. We've been burning tyres in the front of my home. The smell scares it away. Tick, tick, tick. It is getting quieter now. It must be getting closer. Its leathery wings carries it through the night as it searches for us. Does it smell us? When will she find us? Today, I saw a dog smelling around my home. I'd not seen it there before. It was larger than the other dogs in my barangay. It was at least twice the size of the other mongrels in the area. It was black as the moonless night. Mangy fur looked like it was falling out in clumps. Its long ears pricked up as it seemed to hear my breathing. Slowly, it turned its head, searching for me. Saliva dripped from its maw. It looked like it was stained brown as it flowed from its mouth in long jets of spittle. But its eyes, they were not the eyes of a dog. They were the white eyes of an old lady looking straight at me. Its eyes burrowed into me as it seemed to be staring at me longingly. I am sure she has found me. Maybe this was a sigbin, the pet of the witch. A long, deep growl came from the beast as it stared at me. Suddenly it snapped its head to the right. A man's scream came from the distance, startling the sigbin. It fled from the scene. Its tight muscles flexed as it leapt over a fence 2 meters in height to escape. The man appeared carrying a long tail of a stingray. The buntut pagi is deadly when it strikes the witch. A few days later, my grandmother came to see me. "Maria, we have heard it. She is searching for you," my grandmother said with concern in her voice. Looking at my grandmother, I replied, "It is an old wives' tale, Lola. There is no such thing as an Aswang." I tried to stop myself from quivering as I spoke. My grandmother was a kind old lady. Her brown skin was weathered from all the hard years of working in the rice paddies, and her long grey hair was immaculately brushed, without a single strand being out of place. Deep brown eyes stared at me with compassion and fear. Her frail lips were so tightly closed, she was trying to stop herself from crying. "Lola, I'll be fine. She'll not get me. I'll take great care to keep the house locked up of a night time. And there's no such thing as an us." My grandmother cut me off before I could finish. "Don't be foolish, Maria. You should stay with me for a few weeks until the Aswang looks for another woman." She spoke with a sense of urgency that I'd never heard before. I dismissed her. All this talk of witches eating babies was rubbish. We'd all been bored up listening to this. It was a tale made up by the Americans to keep us Filipinos in their home when the sun went down. In this day and age, who believes in this fairy tale? But part of me, inside, did believe this. As my grandmother left my little bamboo home, she offered me one final warning. "Wear black clothing. It is scared of it." She turned and walked off into the night. I felt a sense of foreboding as the sky darkened and the insects started singing into the night. Reaching down, I rested my hand on my stomach. The baby was restless. Maybe they sensed it as well. My husband was working outside the province to earn us some extra money. He'd be gone for a few weeks. I wish he was here now. I needed the comforting. I needed him to tell me there was no such thing as an Aswang. Rolling into bed, I pulled the sheet over me. It'd been another hot and humid day. It was monsoon season, so it was either hot and humid or hot and raining. Reaching over, I pushed the lamp button, and with a loud click, the room was plunged into darkness. My eyes were heavy, and I wanted to rest. Moving around with the extra weight was getting more and more difficult each and every day. Sleep came quickly, but some weird sensation awoke me. I lay in bed, my eyes closed, holding my breath. I listened. There was silence, but it was far too quiet. I could feel a presence in my room. Someone else was there. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Slowly, I opened my eyes, and the room was a mixture of black and grey hues that swirled together to form vague shapes and outlines. Scanning the room slowly, it appeared to be empty, until my eyes rested on an old chair sitting in the corner of the room. There was a dark shape. It seemed to be sitting there, and it was staring at me. Tick, tick, tick. I was paralyzed and couldn't move. It was hard to breathe, and my chest suddenly felt like there was a large stone on it. I was trapped. The old woman in the chair stood up slowly and started shuffling towards my bed. I could hear feet scraping against the floor, but it didn't sound like flesh, but rather like claws digging into the bamboo floor. She was getting closer and closer to the bed. I could smell her breath as she approached. Dead flesh assaulted my nostrils, making me gag. The old woman stood mere feet from my bed. I felt something wet and warm sliver against my leg, leaving a trail of drool as it moved ever higher. The sheet covering my body, my only shield, was tugged away in a violent motion and flew across the room. Tick, tick, tick. At that moment, I regained some movement in my body. Throwing my hand towards the lamp, there was a loud click as the room flared into view. An old woman stood before me. Her grey hair was unkempt and matted in mud, and bright red eyes stared back at me. They were like that of a demon. Her mouth was wide open. Rows of sharp teeth glared at me, and her tongue, the old woman's tongue, slithered out of her mouth. It had tiny barbs all along its length as it travelled down along her body, across the floor, and onto mine. Her tongue, it stopped at my groin. I was unsure of the reason why, until I remembered the colour of my panties. They were black. The beast started to hiss at me loudly. She sounded like a cat screeching. The old woman pulled back her fingers, revealing long black nails. She was getting ready to attack me. I knew she was going to kill me and eat my baby. Her mouth flared open with a scream as there was a loud crack in the air. I could hear skin being torn open. I didn't see the Buntut Pagi as it flicked through the air, but the Aswang screamed at each blow. Her tongue flicked back into her mouth with a spray of bile, and she turned to face the threat behind her. Another crack pierced the air, and her face began to split as the white whip struck her again and again. The Aswang was searching for an escape, but the barrage of blows kept striking her. She fled towards the window. Her body started transforming from that of an old woman into something else. Before my eyes, she changed. Her arms elongated. Mangy fur started to grow on her skin. The bones of her arms twisted and contorted. The cracking and the breaking was almost unbearable until they reached the ground. Her mouth began to elongate. Long, slender teeth protruded from her jaw, and her form became that of a large dog. Running on all fours, her limbs moved at such speed they seemed like they didn't even touch the ground, and with an effortless motion, she leapt through the window and was gone from sight. The old man, who I had seen earlier chasing the dog with the stingray tail, appeared beside me. His kind eyes looked down at me. He sat there in silence, looking me over. Without a word, he rose and walked towards the door. From that day, I didn't hear the Aswang. It had fled, never to be seen again. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's lullaby. If you like my content, please remember, comment, like, and subscribe. My upload schedule has been a little bit hectic of late. I've been concentrating on other projects such as my writing on medium.com and Substack. So if you want to get access to my stories a little bit earlier, feel free to go and check me out on those platforms. Look for Aswang Mike. And remember, keep watching for what's in the dark.